Mark, you invented uh, a process called True Voice, and it's this raises so many important issues. What is True Voice? What is your method that you discovered and use, and also what is our true voice? And I would like to do a series of videos about it because it's such a huge topic and there might be some overlap, but I want to try to tackle that. And so I would like, and it doesn't matter how we start because we're going to take our time. And I would like to know what is a true voice. What's true voice? Both the method and then also what is my true voice? And what is the difference between my ordinary speaking voice, my true voice, and my singing voice?
Wow, okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, this is, of course, my favorite topic in all the world.
Well, you have a very willing audience because I'm very curious.
Let me just start by saying um, True Voice as a topic, the way I understand it, um, is as all-encompassing as life itself in a certain sort of way. There's just nothing that it doesn't touch if you're really open and aware. It's very hard. One of the things I've learned about True Voice, and I'll start talking about in just a moment, but one of the things I've learned about it is certainly that whatever happens in True Voice, in this process, True Voice, it certainly never, ever happens in isolation. It always starts to touch other aspects of your life, in your body, in your emotional life, in your consciousness, in your brain, in your relationships. There's nothing that if you wanted to, it will not somehow give you some insight and also influence for you if you would like that too. So it is a big topic for me.
It's a huge topic, and it makes sense what you say because, well, the voice is basically me, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I have many aspects.
Reflect. Let's say, how about this? Let me start right away.
Yes.
Let's call it. It's a reflection of who I am. It's a reflection of me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I am multiple personalities. I'm my whole history. I am so much that I don't even understand, and my voice is connected to that. So it makes sense that it would be so complicated.
Yeah, and I think it is so many layers to it, and I think we'll just start.
We'll just start,
We'll
and
just start and
whenever we want to take a break, we take a break, and then we'll resume the conversation.
Okay.
Yes, I think it'll be an ongoing process.
Let's start here. For example, True Voice. The name, I chose this name some 20, 25 years ago because it just seemed to fit so well. But it's a name that also has connotations that may not be very helpful to some people. So let me just start right there. If we say True Voice, it sort of implies, okay, that there is a true voice, and that means that there must be a false voice. And this is not what I mean.
Okay.
True voice has to do with trying to identify something that's authentic to us. That in a moment of honesty, of clarity, of recognition, that there's something authentic that happens. There's a moment of authenticity for us as humans. And when that moment has a sound that goes with it as an expression of it, or to help communicate it, then we're right there. And I always say, true voice, what is true voice? The sound of the true voice is what comes out when something authentic is happening. That's my best definition so far. I've been working on a definition for 25 years, and after 25 years, that's my best definition so far. Maybe there'll be better ones at some point. But it's what happens. It's the sound that comes out when something authentic is taking place. That's my best definition of true voice. Now, let's make it a little more practical. And this was for me it was like a little revelation to realize that most people the sound that we hear every day, the sound like when I'm speaking now, the sound that we hear every day when we speak, or if we're singers, the sound that we hear when we're singing. Most people identify that sound that they hear with the words, my voice. What I'm hearing every day, and it always sounds basically the same, what I'm hearing is then, the sound I'm hearing is my voice. Okay. Now, and here's my little bombshell. What I discovered with working, I think I said it in the last video, but 40 years of giving singing lessons, and or 25 years of doing true voice process work, is that I would make the maybe provocative statement that the sound that you're hearing, that you think of as your voice, is almost never your voice. What we're hearing is what I like to call sometimes the conditioned voice. We're hearing a conditioned sound. We're hearing, let me give a few words for it, what I like to call it. Sometimes I call it the conditioned voice. Sometimes the biographical voice. Sometimes I like to call it the developed voice. It's a sound, it's not the voice itself. It's a sound that has developed as a result of my upbringing, result of my development just as a human being. You know, little children can't remain little children. You know, we become adults, and that requires not only just a physical development, that requires a tremendous amount of emotional development, a tremendous amount of learning, cognitive developments that take place. And also everything that goes with it, you know, the parts of us that are talented in certain kinds of ways or learn things, certain kinds of things well, those are somehow integrated into that sound. And also the things that we fall down and stumble on, maybe deep emotional wounds or even traumas, are something, they land in our voices. Emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, thinking patterns, identity patterns, all are reflected in our vocal sound. And the sound that we come up with that every day always sounds the same to us is a kind of it's like all of these things, is if you took all of these experiences and our reactions and our developmental phases and strategies and tactics and whatever that grew out of us in our development, if you threw them all into one big pot, and then mix it around, and then every day you put a little bit out, you know, you're always going to get, you know, you're always going to get the same mix because it has the same contents, and the mix is always going to be the same, and we call that my voice. Well, no, it's not true. It's not my voice at all. It's my development it's my development voice. It's the voice and that's the word that I like the best about voices. What I just used with you is to think of the voice as a mirror of my sense of identity.
Oh, that makes great sense. Yes.
It's a mirror of my sense of identity. Not even, I wouldn't even go so far as to say it's not a mirror of my identity, although that can be, and that's true voice, but it's certainly a mirror of my sense of identity, who I think that I am, how I feel who I am. And the thing about a voice is, we think of it just as an organic thing because there's an organic process going on, an anatomical process going on, in order to create sound in a human voice. And so we tend, though, to stop there and think that our voice, because we're hearing it every day, that is the consequence of this organic process. And it's only because my organ is the way it is that's the way I sound. Okay, well, my experience is that it's seldom that. It's a product, it's a sound which is a product, it's a sound which is a consequence of my sense of identity, which I have learned and developed over many, many years. Okay, so that's the first thing. And so my favorite word above all words, probably, I just call it the biographical voice, the developed voice, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's a kind of, let's call it a substitute voice, an ersatz voice,
Mm-hmm.
basically, is what we end up with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is true voice? Okay. And my best definition here, if I start with this, is to kind of say first what it's not.
Mm-hmm.
My true voice is not my conditioned voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to find my true voice is, if there's a way that I can find to let go of that conditioned sound that I have learned and associate with myself as being my voice, if I can find a way to drop all that and not have to use that, and I do that, the sound that's left, the sound that's not conditioned anyway, that sound, that's the one.
Oh, wow.
That's the one that's buried. That's the one that's been waiting for me to find. It's like buried treasure all of my life. And I never knew that it was there. And I had no idea how to get to it. But if I can find a way to kind of drop and not use all that conditioned sound, that learned sound, that learned biographical voice, if I can find a way to just, even for a few moments, to kind of not use that and still keep my sound going, the sound that starts to come out is like, it's a sound that we've never heard before. It's a sound that nobody knows.
Oh.
It's a voice that no one has ever heard. I've never heard it, my family's never heard it, my relationship, my friend, my wife, my husband, my children, my parents, nobody's ever heard this sound out of me. And this is a sound that I think is such an essential bridge, or let's say an essential doorway. I think doorway is probably better. Essential doorway to a much deeper, more essential, authentic sense of myself than almost anything that I've had to learn over the space of my lifetime. Our learned voice, because it reflects my sense of identity, then is a wonderful expression of my personality. It's a wonderful expression of psychological issues. I have, for example, if I've learned, that if in my family one of the parents was like really, really dominant and really too loud and overbearing, then usually a voice here as a child will take one of two strategies to deal with that situation. They will either try to fight against it and try to be louder than that voice, if it's loud. Try to be more powerful than that voice. Try to take more room and basically go into kind of competition with it. If this works, if this happens over a period of years, if the parent allows that to happen, then basically what we have is a kind of, as an adult, we have our voice, which I call it the rebel voice. It's the fighting voice. It's the voice that's always against something. And we end up being stuck kind of in a place where our voice is too loud, it's too, it penetrates, and it penetrates into situations and to dialogues and to conversations and rooms and situations with a force that always feels uncomfortable for everyone around them. They're always going to be too much because it's set in this sort of too much, because that was their only way to survive. That was the way to deal with that situation. That was their strategy, was to be against it, to grow and to really be strong and powerful. But in a normal setting or in other kinds of setting, it's just way, way too much. But they can't leave it now because that voice is like set. That's the learned voice. That's the substitution voice. It has nothing to do with the organic voice. Now, another solution, and that's actually a more common solution, is if that child then gives up. It says, I can't compete with this. It's too powerful for me. I can't win. let's say you have a narcissistic parent, you can't win against a narcissistic parent, so what do? You just turn off and you go back to your inner little world. And you live in your inner world because you know that this world is always going to be, it's always going to make you wrong in some fashion or other. I mean, that's just one example. But it's always going to be too much, so you go back. And so what happens is your voice becomes very pulled back. It's often, when these children now become adults, they often have quite an open voice, but it's not always well formed. You can feel that in the development that something has maybe not happened quite like it could have, or in an optimal form. There's something a little formless about it. It's very open. It's a little airy, but very, very open. And there's a lot of love there, maybe, and maybe a lot of light going on, and a lot of empathy going on. Probably a lot of empathy. But that center core sound of my own identity, of my own personality, of my own sense of myself, my personal truth, is somehow missing in these voices. Is that the true voice? No. Is that a learned voice? Absolutely. It's a voice that, once again, out of their own desperation, of their own suffering, of their own, as a strategy to deal with the situation that no one can understand at that age anyway.
It's a survival voice almost.
It's a survival voice. And it's a totally unconscious voice. Probably like the decision to, oh my God, to survive. I mean, it's more of an instinct to us at that time, not less of a decision. But I think probably it is also a decision on some level. And so what we have, though, is a voice that's chronically pulled back. It's chronically here. It's always going to be here. And man, there's so much empathy there, and such a sweet guy, or such a wonderful, warm woman. But in a kind of situation where they really need to speak their own truth, you realize that this part of the voice has somehow been stolen from them almost. It's been taken away from them. They had no chance to live. It's had no chance to go through a natural and healthy development. It's been somehow really taken from them. So these are, for example, just two examples of how a developed voice can occur and does occur. Happens regularly. It's happening right now. In thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, not millions of families right now, as I'm speaking about it, over the world. It's happening right now, and it will continue to happen tomorrow, next year, in 10 years, 100 years, where this cycle just keeps happening, and we keep producing these developed voices that reflect our development, and always, though, the possibility, maybe we'll end this little snippet here, always sort of covering over the possibility, the great potential that is in every person to discover who they really are when they're able to not follow their conditioning, when they're able to not have to react based on their strategies that they developed as children or teenagers, the kinds of tactics, the kind of survival techniques, the kind of patterns that we all developed to deal with our environment and to deal with ourselves, to deal with our relationships. There's a voice and there's a person. There's a sense of identity waiting for us that doesn't use any of that. And it's that sort of essential, I like to use the word soul from time to time, even though that can be very controversial, but it's some essential sense of self, an essential sense of beingness, of human beingness that's waiting for us on the other side of all this conditioning. And when we discover that sound, that it helps us certainly as human beings then to suddenly experience who we are in a way that none of those definitions apply. Like none of those definitions need apply because they're all true on a certain level, but at this level they have nothing to say anymore. This essential quality of self emerges, opens, and you become aware of that, and it's not like an exercise in awareness. It's suddenly there, and it's there in the absence of everything that's not it. All these conditions, identities you talked about at the beginning, we're all so many different kinds of people, and different personalities and different patterns, and it's all true. And the true voice and whatever self that is, that emerges in that moment, it emerges in the absence of all those other identities and identity patterns. And of course, that's the Om Mani Padme Hum. That's the great jewel waiting for us in the lotus flower. It's the great discovery of a human being, is to learn that a human is not just a human, but a being that is being in that moment. And that makes an entire life of development and even suffering maybe worthwhile for that one moment when you really discover who you are, when we discover who we are. And true voice is just one way of several ways, but it's a wonderful way because it's so direct and it's so simple to suddenly, as that, and I think I'll close here, but as that sound finally has a chance to come out, as you have a chance to finally make that sound, as a chance, or let it go through you, you don't really make it, it just sort of vibrates through you. And you have a chance to hear that sound, maybe for the very first time. As that sound emerges, and that sleeping sense of deeper self emerges with it. And then it's not like even talking about it like right now, it's like a knowingness that goes beyond all knowledge. It's a knowingness that's you can't replace with any kind of objective definition anymore. It's just a knowing. It's that you know who you are, and in that moment you are that which you are. And that's the great value of true voice, is that through our vocal sound we have a chance not just to reflect our learned self, we have a chance to reflect and to experience some essential aspect of that self.
Wow. Thank you very much.